understanding that there are very significant cultural differences between the East and West. You need to come to grips with where those key differences are. Quite often, for people working in China or coming to China, they hear of this word called Guan XI. Guan XI can be translated into relationships, but it means a great deal more than that. It's the inherent trust and confidence that the Chinese will have in you as an individual, and that translates for the individual into the confidence and trust that is reflected in the company. It doesn't happen overnight, just as it, anywhere else in the world. Relationships do not happen within the space of one meeting, they take time. And this is where it's very important that you have patience and the tolerance to be able to continue to develop that. Having said that though, Guan XI now is changing in terms of its characteristics, and I would go as far as to say Guan XI is normalizing. Guan XI is becoming very much like any relationships that any businessman have in terms of their daily work. So for instance, 25 years ago, when I first lived in China, Guan XI was survival. To be able to buy your rice in the local store, you needed coupons, rations. If you didn't have those rations or you ran out of them, you had to know someone who could help you get extra rations. Or you wanted to buy a ticket, a flight from Beijing to Hong Kong, where there was no ticket office, there was no timetable, you had no idea which airlines were flying when and where on which days. And if you would go into something that was more like a warehouse, you would find 1,000 people milling and thronging. It was a crowd, there was no lines. How did you get your ticket? You needed Guan XI. You needed to have a relationship with someone who could go in the back door, so to speak, and help you to understand the timetables, the flight schedules, the price of tickets, and whether there was anything available. Those days are now long since gone. So Guan XI is very much akin to the reasons that a particular director is selected for a board of a company. It's the knowledge and relationships they bring within a greater network that can support a particular company in terms of its development. So that's a very key aspect, understanding that particularly with China. And to a large degree, you find that's also true of many other countries within the region. What is very important to understand right now is that, particularly with China, how decisions are made, the dynamics behind the decision making, what is motivating Chinese companies and Chinese businessmen to undertake the deals they do, particularly to globalize, going abroad as we see them now increasingly around the world. You have the birth of a private sector that has not existed for decades, and certainly this is the first time you're seeing with the new leadership this drive to separate government from business, from commerce. Whereas previously everything was determined and driven by a government, politically led. Now you're finding the birth of a very free private sector that is being encouraged actually by government. So the government is there to support them now and to underpin them with administrative facilitation, still supervising, very much as any government does in Europe or any other part of the advanced world, but allowing that private sector to develop its own strategies and go where it feels it is best and make the decisions for themselves, taking then the full responsibility for doing that.